welcome back to the JFPT Ultimate Podcast. It's a conversational podcast where I bring a guest on who isn't necessarily into fitness to talk about fitness. My name is Jamie, and with me today is someone a little bit different to last episode. Not that he's not as entertaining, but he is a current client of mine. It's Robert Mathershaw. Welcome, Rob.
Hello there. Hello. I'm certainly not as famous as your previous person.
Well, yeah, he's made a name for himself with his egg eating. But how are you doing?
I'm not bad at all, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really well, thanks. You know, as good as can be with everything that's going on, but is what it is. We'll make do. So yeah, as I said, Rob is a current client of mine. Has been for I can't count, but since the end of March, I think we said. Was it?
It feels like forever, but in a good way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of you to say. But yeah, so unlike obviously when I had Adam on, Rob and I have, even though we've been friends through other means, it's largely been sort of, at least this year, quite a professional relationship in terms of me being your personal trainer.
You say, that you're my personal trainer. If you'd have said to me before March that I would ever have a personal trainer, I would have called you a liar straight to your face. Yeah,
I mean, you're the one that took the step into wanting to change.
No, absolutely. I think that the circumstances for lockdown that kind of got everyone, with their thinking about the future and thinking about things slightly differently, it was the perfect opportunity to do something. And luckily, I happen to know this bloke who's quite a good personal trainer, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely helps. It's always about who you know. So that worked out really well. And to be honest, Rob is doing fantastic.
Yeah, there's quite a bit less of me than there was in March, and there's quite a bit more of me in other places that matter.
Yeah.
That sounded
it did a little bit, but we'll go with that. It makes you sound impressive. So we'll take this opportunity to sort of segue into what we did last time with Adam, which is your induction. In terms of your history with exercise, obviously This year you've taken the opportunity to use the time that we've had during lockdown and other periods to change yourself. But how would you say your history with exercise is and fitness in general?
I'd say it's certainly been a love-hate relationship, erring slightly more on the hate for most of my childhood.
Yeah, I know we've spoken about this in the past, so I know you haven't been a particular fan of exercise for varying reasons. Was there anything in particular that you didn't like?
It's a difficult one. I'm a very competitive person, and I was always, if there was a sport I was good at, I really enjoyed playing it. But unfortunately, when you're slightly larger as a kid, you don't do very well in a lot of sports, at which point you have problems trying to get good at sports, which is a bit of a vicious cycle, really. And I really enjoyed playing football, but when you're inevitably slower than everybody on the pitch, they put you in goal, which kind of ruins it ever so slightly.
Yeah, I mean, and then in terms of the exercise that you get from actually being in goal, it's significantly less than when you're running around the pitch. So yeah, that doesn't really work well, does it?
No, there is that.
Yeah. Obviously, growing up because of that, I imagine your relationship with exercise was sort of compounded in the fact that you didn't really have one.
Yeah, I think I used to enjoy riding my bike, that kind of thing, but that was always never really doing it for significant periods of time as an exercise thing. That was just something fun to do. But until my last year of secondary school, when I moved down to just outside Glasgow, I never really PE of a week in school was kind of my only major exercise, and even then, as I say, they'd stick me between the sticks in goal, and I didn't do anything.
This is one thing that I have a real problem with in schools. I don't for something that's called physical education. I think there's a real lack of the education part, and I don't mean to be harsh on schools. I mean, obviously it's a difficult curriculum to sort of put in there, especially with kids that don't necessarily want to learn about it. But from my experience, it was a lot of, we're going to teach you the rules of this sport and you're going to play it. And
yeah,
I mean, for me, I love fitness. It's my passion, but I didn't really enjoy PE because I don't care about football. I love badminton. I love playing that, and I always enjoyed doing that. And when we did gym work, again, even though I wasn't as passionate about that then, I still appreciated doing that because it made more sense to me than going around kicking a ball. So I think that's something that really needs to change, and something that they should put a lot more emphasis on, actually educating people as not just, this is going to make you healthier, but giving people a reason why they're doing it, and trying to definitely put an emphasis on enjoying exercise. It doesn't have to look like going for a run for 30 minutes a day. It doesn't have to be kicking a ball around. You can find your own way with it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that it's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because as I say, I'm one of the most competitive people I know. So if you put me in a situation of a sport that I'm absolutely terrible at, I'm not going to enjoy it, and I'm probably going to stop playing it. Whereas if you start doing things for the sake of you having exercise because it's good for you, and it's it's something that you can enjoy in isolation from the competitive element, as you say, you can start to kind of build on that with the kids, and they'll surely start to enjoy their PE lessons for being, as you say, physical education rather than sports rules education.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for any teachers listening out there, change up a bit. We could do better. But obviously, you've, as you say, you've had this sort of love-hate with relationship. What really prompted you to make that change?
When I think that my attitude towards exercise in general changed a little bit, as I say, when I came down for my final year of secondary school, we as a family moved, and I joined a school where the attitude to PE and exercise was actually an awful lot better. Where there was always that competitive element, but it was always that the really good people were put with the really bad people, such as myself. So you ended up with a good balance, so that even the people who were just doing it for the sake of playing the sport actually still got a good run out of it. And rather than being the one at the end of the PE lesson who was just standing there going, "Oh, when was I actually going to do anything?" I would probably the one that was blowing and puffing more than anybody, because the PE teacher insisted that I played as the central striker. We lost every game, but I had an absolutely great time, and it just so happened that the support of the people in the class was better as well. Because I think that as you get a bit more mature in school, the idea of the fat kid not really being good at sports becomes slightly less funny in some ways. So that certainly helped kind of get over my fear of, oh, I don't really want to do sports anymore. And then I leveled off after that. I'd lost a little bit of weight, but then coming into lockdown, I've always thought, oh, when I have the time. But then there was always that excuse of, oh, I've got work, I've got this, I've got that. But actually, lockdown happened. I was spending an hour a day not driving to work and back. So I thought, well, what better way to use that time than to give this a go? And haven't really looked back since.
I mean, I'm glad you brought up the whole time aspect, because I think a lot of people do think that way, in that no one really thinks they have time to exercise. And I'm sure there are some people that really genuinely do not have time. They are busy all the time. So if you're one of those people, that's absolutely fine. But I do think a lot of people use their lack of time, in air quotes, as an excuse.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's something that I certainly would have said 6 months ago. Oh, absolutely. I can see why there would be lots of people that can't. But actually, once all I needed was the 3 or 4 weeks to get into the habit of every day doing some exercise, moving on, kind of doing things. And then suddenly lockdown ended. I was doing God knows what. And actually every day there was still the time to actually do my exercise. And no point did I think, oh Christ, I've run out of time for the day. All you're doing is substituting sitting on your backside doing nothing for getting moving. You've got into that habit, and suddenly you feel so much better for it that I think it's just getting over that big first hurdle of actually getting started. And once you've done that, I honestly do think that you're right. I don't think there's anyone that can honestly say they never have any time to at least make an effort and do a bit more exercise if they're not doing any already.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't have time to relax, because that's just as important, if anything. But when you start prioritizing your goals, and when you start really thinking about what it is you want, then you'll be surprised of the time that you can find to do it. And I think you're a great example in that you had that spare time suddenly when lockdown began, and then you started it. And if anything, after that, it was difficult to get you to stop. There were times when I was like, you could probably take a break now. And you were like, no, let's let's do more.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you definitely went, and I think that's again your competitive spirit coming out and really wanting to push yourself and be better. So I think people can learn from that.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying about kind of relaxation time, it's an interesting one that again, 6 months ago, I'd have never thought, oh, how am I going to relax? I'm going to do some exercise. But actually, you come home from a long day of work or you come from home from doing whatever. I actually think that after half an hour of exercise, you put your favorite music on, you just kind of, especially when you're I'm as fortunate a position as working with someone like yourself who kind of does all the hard yards for me in terms of telling me what exercises will complement what I'm aiming for next. You can put your music on and you can mindlessly just spend an hour doing all of this and it clears your mind. And honestly, I think that that is more relaxing than anybody who would sit on the sofa, put the TV on and eat a bowl of ice cream. I think that you get so much out of it mentally as well as physically by actually just investing in that time and energy to exercise every day or regularly that I think it just has benefits far beyond the obvious. Oh, you'll lose weight, you'll get fitter, you might become more muscular. I think the mental health benefits are something else as well.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more with that. I know that's something that we have spoken about in the past when we've discussed obviously how you're getting on with your exercise, but people do really underestimate how much better you feel, and not just physically, but as you say, mentally as well. And it's something you can't necessarily explain. You can see the results of physical exercise, but that feeling that you get, the endorphins from just completing the exercise, but everything else that goes along with it as time passes, it is something you can't necessarily explain. But when you do start feeling it, it does feel fantastic. It's the confidence that you get. It's a whole bundle of things, really.
Yeah, I think there's also, for me at least, there's this element of kind of completionism, and rather than doing nothing, at the end of it, you've had time to not only enjoy music that you enjoy, you can do whatever with it. It's that feeling of I've achieved something after an hour, and then you can sit down and you can watch the TV and you can do absolutely nothing after that, and you think, yeah, but look what I've just done. Like it's absolutely brilliant at times. Like when you're having a good day, exercise is the cherry on the top. And when you're having a day that's a bit more difficult, exercise can, I find actually, you do a good workout and it can be what can salvage a day from being something you're going to think, oh, for God's sake, not again, to actually, it's a good day in the end. And I think it's amazing for that. And I think that I'm very much a convert when it comes to the idea of this, of exercise being something that's far more important than a lot of people give it credit for.
Yeah, and I think depending on the time of day you do your exercise, that can really help as well. I know when I get up in the morning, I love to do my exercise, because no matter what happens during that day, after that point, I know that I've achieved something during that day. And to me, that's special. That helps me, get on with the day. And I know when people do it at the end of the day, they know that not only do they have that release, if things haven't gone the way you want during the day, you have that release to push through all of it. Again, it's sort of an unexplainable feeling, but just pushing through it and doing something and achieving something that you are responsible for, that you don't have to rely on anyone else to do it. If you're waiting for something, if you want to achieve something and other people are factors in that gets all taken away and it's just you. And there's just something nice. There's something really nice about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that is also the thing that some people do find daunting to start with, isn't it? It's the idea that it is all on them. And while that's a very empowering thing, I think until you've kind of done that a few times and you realize, actually, hang on, I can rely on myself to do this and kind of complete what I want to do out of this. Or hang on, nobody's going to tell me, nobody's going to push me to do this, to do that. Well, if nobody pushes me, I'm not going to do it. And then you don't get started. But once you've kind of done it, I think that you get over the hump of the hill and then suddenly, you build up momentum so quickly on it. And as you've said, it just kind of, it snowballs to the fact that a day where you're not doing a bit of exercise or you're not kind of pushing yourself just that little bit more, kind of almost wondering what to do next. It's a really interesting feeling.
Absolutely. And I think, as you say, with it being quite a daunting task, I think not to plug myself or plug personal trainers in general. I've always been an advocate of people working with who they have a rapport with, not necessarily coming to me because it makes me money. But having that personal trainer, like you say, take the work out of it for you in terms of they're designing the program, they're telling you what to do. It takes that aspect out of it where it's just you have to complete this task. You don't have to do the research. You don't have to sort of go through the motions of working out what's best for you, stressing about which exercises are the best, especially when you've got Instagram influencers every day talking about all these different complex exercises you should do to get, the best this and the best that. You know that you've got a professional giving you exactly what you need at that given time, and all you have to do is get on with it.
Yeah, I think it's a really empowering thing. I think that's definitely the right word for it. And I think that it's wider than that as well, isn't it? It's the idea that after you've had your exercise, what do you eat? What am I supposed to be eating that's healthy? What am I eating that's not healthy? I think that having somebody just to chat to and to kind of give you the idea of, okay, actually, if you do want to have a bit of a treat, there's no problem with that because, as long as you've kind of put the effort in beforehand with the exercise, I think that it's because right now I'm eating a lot more than I used to when I was putting on weight 6 to 8 months ago. But because I'm putting the work in, I think food is a big problem for a lot of people in general for kind of their health. But I think that once they get over that hurdle of, oh, hang on a minute, if I change my habits, they find that their habits don't have to change all that much. And it's something else that I think that everything just piles up, doesn't it? Until you've started, you look at it and it's a solid brick wall. But it's like any wall. Once you take a couple of the bricks out, it'll start to crumble and you can kind of walk through without any issues.
I think this is something that you have found quite surprising, really, in that when we've gone through the nutrition side of things, you found that you can have a fair bit more than you thought you'd be able to. I think the common preconception is that dieting and working with a personal trainer, it's going to be really restrictive, it's going to be tough. But actually, I think you found that definitely on the nutrition side that it's, apart from obviously getting used to tracking calories, it's not all that difficult.
Yeah, for sure. I think that because to start with, it was almost a case of you kind of cut back on the really sweet stuff to start with, or the really kind of unhealthy stuff. But actually, you end up eating enough of everything else that you think actually this is a much nicer way to eat. Anyway, you have 3 good meals a day, and then you have a couple of things that you like to take. You like a bit as snacks and as a treat, rather than kind of going back to my old ways. Certainly, if I opened a packet of biscuits, I could guarantee you that 20 minutes later there'd be nothing left in the packet. Now I can open a packet of biscuits and actually I'm looking forward to eating them over the course of a week, and it's a mindset change with that. But actually you enjoy your food so much more by thinking about it in that way, and I think rather than just gorging yourself on anything that's available. And I think it's definitely a shift in your kind of mentality. But once you've managed it, I think it's an absolute game changer, because you don't suddenly think, oh, hang on a minute, I could really do with a biscuit now, but I'm not going to have one because I can't. It's actually, you can plan around if you really, really, really want a treat, but actually you find that you don't really have that much of an urge because you've eaten better for everything else during meal times. And I think your body responds to that with kind of less of a need to kind of get all of those treats into your system.
Definitely. I think that ranges from person to person. I think you being the competitive person you are, I think you're sort of wired to do your best anyway. I know there's some people that possibly would struggle more, but as you mentioned earlier, having that person with you as support, I think it definitely does help. People see personal trainers as sort of these drill sergeants, but actually, I think if you get the right personal trainer, they're a friend. They're there for support. Again, it's something that I think is a common misconception with the industry. So, given everything that we've said, obviously given the training you've undergone, how healthy would you say you are right at this moment?
Ooh, that's a difficult one. Relatively speaking, I'd probably say a 7 out of 10. I think if I had to put it on that kind of scale, I'd probably say a 7 out of 10, on the basis that I'd say that before I started, I was possibly as low as a 3. I think that that's a very difficult question. I think that's a leading question from you there, isn't it?
I mean, maybe a little bit. I mean, yeah, you being a client of mine, it may be a little bit swayed. Yeah, it is a difficult one because what do you compare it against?
Yeah.
Even myself, if I compare my health compared to other people, it's going to have a big range, a big difference. But if you compare it with how you feel to yourself at any point in your life, then yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, a 3 to a 7 is pretty good, I'd say.
The problem I have with is scaling things out of 10 is I honestly think a 10 is impossible. There's always a reason you could do better, but that's just my competitive streak once again,
Absolutely,
rearing its ugly head.
There's lots of examples of that, but yeah, I do agree. What would 100% health even look like? It's mind-boggling.
I certainly wouldn't want to argue with it.
Yeah, you and me both. I'll agree with you there. So this is something else that we've obviously talked about, and I'm sure this is something that has changed over the course of our time together as well. But what would you say your ultimate form is?
Ooh. See, now 6 months ago, it was definitely, lose a bit of weight and just generally not be quite as fat as I was, with the best will in the world. Now I've kind of got to that stage where I have started to reach that kind of goal. I don't know. I think that it's just the ultimate form will always be kind of trying to ever improve that little bit more. Oh, that's a very good question, and it's not one I don't think I can answer it like with a straight answer, which is why I'm talking around it so much.
That's fine. I mean, it's a difficult question in that everyone's ultimate form is different. Obviously, when I had this rebrand, I knew that the word ultimate in itself would be a little bit difficult in that it sounds very elitist. That the whole ultimate thing makes people think of being the strongest or the fastest or the fittest or the healthiest or whatever comes to mind. But it's not about that. It's about how you want to perceive yourself, really. I mean, take Adam in the last episode. His ultimate form was around having functional strength. Essentially, he wanted to be able to do all these weird and wonderful things that that are mainly to do with having a functional body instead of aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
And I think you're right in that, especially as you're training, your ultimate form does change. I know that mine certainly has over the years I've been training. So yeah, I think that's quite an honest answer from you there.
Yeah, I think it's something that I'm quite a pragmatist as well. I think that I like to pick a goal that I think I can achieve, and then when I get to that one, I'll pick another one. Everyone has their kind of their absolute dream, but I think I think that my next goal is probably to kind of tone up a bit so that, and then as I say, I think it's functional strength. It's something that there were days that I do a lot of work with the karting team. I think that there were days kind of 12 months ago where you'd sit down in the hotel at the end of the day and I'd be absolutely knackered. And now I can go and work with the team, and it's been a long day. I might be mentally tired, but actually physically I'm ready to go for the next day. It's an awful lot easier to get up the next morning at 6:30 when you haven't had so much taken out of you the previous day. So I think that in that regard, the functional side of things, it's not really something I've properly consciously thought about. But no, I think that's something that's certainly worth considering.
Okay, so it's now time for the last segment, which is the ultimate discussion. Okay, so I believe, Rob, you have something for us today.
Yeah, I'm very much the sort of person that has enjoyed kind of embarking on my fitness journey, for want of a less corny phrase, without the gyms. They've been closed during lockdown, and to be honest with you, I never had a particular urge to go to one, but I've always been intrigued. What are the pros and cons of going to the gym?
Okay, so how do you want to do this? I've made a list. So do you want me to go through my list?
Yeah, I've got a mental list,
Okay.
And then for the ones I've forgotten, I can pretend that yours were on my list too, so I look cleverer.
Perfect. So, in terms of pros, what I've gone with is, firstly, what came to mind was the fact that there is a much wider variety of equipment to choose from.
Yeah.
So, obviously, you can quite happily and easily build sort of your own gym from home with quite little equipment, to be honest. I mean, I know that obviously for quite a majority of the lockdown training, you didn't have really any equipment apart from things that you found around the house to use as weights. And then we moved to resistance bands. But other than that, I think your training's gone pretty well without it. So
Yep.
I don't necessarily think that it's a necessity, but for people that really want to enhance their training in certain ways, or don't necessarily want to spend money on getting equipment at home, then the variety of equipment at a gym can be really useful. There's also having a proper working environment mentally. For me personally, and I think for you as well, I don't have any trouble with setting up a place at home where I can get on with my workout. A lot of people, I think, are not a lot necessarily, but I think there are some people that struggle with separating doing their exercise with having a place where they relax. It's the same as doing work from home, essentially. It's a tricky one. So going to a place where you have to do exercise because it was built for that purpose, I think can work in some people's favour.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. Because thinking back now again to my wonderfully misspent childhood where I didn't do any exercise when I probably should have done. One of the things we did do is there was a rotation of PE. Rather than doing sports, they did actually have what they called the fitness suite, and it was a small gym within the school. And for 3 months at a time, you were in the winter, because we lived up in a small Scottish island where the kind of the warmest it got in January was about -3, so they thought it was probably unfair to make you do sports outside. But we had the fitness suite, and thinking back now, it had some really good weights training kit, it had some treadmills, it had all sorts, and how little I actually made use of it during those PE sessions. Looking back now, I'm actually like, why did I do that? I would have loved to have had to go on these bits of kit now. And I think it's a really interesting one that when it comes to the equipment, I don't have any major urge to do it, to go to a gym at the moment, because as you say, I think that with resistance bands, with kind of well thought out training plans by someone who knows what they're doing, which isn't me certainly, I think that you can kind of get by without them. But I've always been intrigued. I think the biggest barrier to entry with me is that obviously how much it costs to get access to all of that equipment. But at the same time, I think that it's something that eventually, in the very long term, in terms of my kind of trying to improve my fitness further and further, I think there will become a point where I'll take the plunge and actually go, even if it's just on a kind of temporary basis, just to try the equipment, because it's something that it's almost just another exciting aspect to it, isn't it? Everyone loves their toys and their technology, and in the fitness industry, I suppose that's all the bits of kit that you play with, isn't it?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, there's some very basic equipment that gyms have that you could have at home, but it's also the aspect of how much weight you can add on. I mean, I don't have a squat rack at home. That would be great, and I could certainly squat a lot more if that were the case. I know that if I go to a gym, I could squat 100 kilos, or I could try. I don't remember the last time I was squatting that heavy, to be honest. I haven't been to a gym in a while. But I know that that's possible because there are those infrastructures in place to do that. I'm not going to try and squat anywhere close to that if I don't have a squat rack, because it's just dangerous. I'm sure there are some people that can, if they can also military press that sort of weight as well, but that's not me at the moment. So
yeah,
that's not going to work. Whereas in a gym, you've got that environment, you've got that, that equipment to do that. I've also got down getting out of the house. I think this is one that's particularly become prevalent over this lockdown period, that a lot of people have been stuck in. So they might just want to get out and go somewhere.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good one actually as well. Is that, I suppose, as much as anything, there's a social aspect to it, isn't it? If you end up going to the gym kind of the same times every day, every couple of days, every week, or whenever, you're going to see the same people over and over, and then eventually you might, strike up a conversation, as you say, at this time of year, or at this time of kind of in times of a COVID crisis. That kind of continuity and that social aspect is probably invaluable to a lot of people, isn't it?
Took the words right out of my mouth, because what I've got written here is social aspect. Potentially meeting like-minded people. So again, like you said, personally for myself, depending on the day, I've probably got my headphones in. I'm probably not likely to speak to someone because I'm in the zone. But there is always that chance that you will speak to someone, you'll strike up a conversation, and you could meet friends that way. So if you're at home, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one friends wise as well. Is that so? I've obviously at work of a few of the people there that they're very keen cyclists. So it's a kind of a different element of fitness to the sort of thing that I've been looking at to an extent. But it's just another conversation point. Even if you are doing your fitness at home or you kind of you're making do with whatever you've got, you can have a chat with people. And I think that social aspect, in terms of not necessarily being at a gym and having the social aspect, there are a lot of people that I've kind of got to know better in my time talking to them, because rather, you can talk about the things that you already had in common, but it's just another thing to chat about. And it's amazing how many people I think quietly do go about their fitness and don't really have anyone to talk to. So I think it's really nice when you do find someone that kind of, even if they're further along and they're kind of better at it than you in terms of their reaching their ultimate form. It's just nice to be able to talk to people on that kind of journey, isn't it?
I can definitely attest to that, in that before I became a personal trainer, it's difficult to talk to people about fitness because, again, some people have preconceptions about it. Some people just aren't interested. If you've got people that even do a little bit of running or do any sort of exercise, it's much easier to strike up a conversation if you do that as well. And having that conversation, which again is something that a personal trainer can provide. It's just having that conversation point and being able to talk about it. It's so nice.
Yeah, I think because between us, as you say, we've known each other for, well, must be quite a while now, through other avenues, particularly at motorsport, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's kind of I think there is a whole new level to our kind of chats and our friendship, because beyond the obvious personal trainer and client kind of chatting to each other, I think there's a genuine kind of I'm always really interested by the sort of things that you're getting on with, because I can you think long term, and it's the idea that give it 3 to 5 years maybe I could start kind of thinking about things in a similar way. I think it might take a bit longer for me to reach that kind of stage, but you know what I mean. It's that
I'm not sure.
it's
I'm
that
not so
kind of
sure it will. I mean, yeah, your rate of progress. I mean, you are a lot stronger than I think you give yourself credit for. But yeah, absolutely, I couldn't agree more. For my next pro, I would have to say this might not be something that you necessarily need, but there should be trained staff there to help you. And if you're someone who does your workout at home, who does it all themselves, who doesn't necessarily have an online coach, then having those staff members there in a good gym, because I have seen members at other gyms that aren't necessarily quite as helpful. Having those people there can really help to not only show you how the equipment works, but to show you correct form, to make sure that you're doing things right, so that you're not going to hurt yourself, to giving you a program. I know that obviously we have solely worked online. I mean, for everyone listening, we've never physically met. This is also the first time we've verbally spoken, but
absolutely.
but yeah, some people need that. Some people will find that useful. I think you can still get just as much help online with the right person, but having someone one-to-one in that environment can really be useful. As for the cons, the obvious one that comes to mind is money. You've said it, and I'm reiterating that point, is that gyms can cost anything from 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds a month. It can get expensive, and if you'd rather do it at home and have the spare funds to get some equipment, truthfully speaking, you might be able to get just as much of a workout, especially if you're a beginner. And then if you're then spending some of that money on getting someone to help you design you a program as well, then you might be getting a lot more value for money than going to a gym where you see people who walk around doing a set of each equipment and then going home. I know it's not necessarily their fault if they don't know what they should be doing, but in terms of value for money, it's not great.
Yeah, no, I'm certainly inclined to agree with you on that one, because it's all about what you're investing in yourself. I think that if you can afford to, then absolutely brilliant. As you say, invest in being able to in the gym membership and the personal trainer and everything. But I think that in terms of, from my point of view at least, I think in terms of making that investment in myself, I definitely think I've got far better return, for want of a better phrase maybe, than out of working with you than I would have done, as you say, if I'd ever signed up to a gym, turned up, played with the weights for a bit, done a couple of the machines, and then gone home every day. it would have been almost aimless. I think the people that you're working with are far more important, it would appear to me certainly, than the equipment that you're working with. It's like, for instance, as you say, my resistance bands. The only reason I got those resistance bands is because I got an Amazon voucher and I thought, oh, I might as well spend them on something I'll use, and I got them. And in the end, they were, well, what were they? They must have, I think they were 25 quid for a pack. I bought them with an Amazon voucher, so I didn't even, have to really think about it in terms of that. And I'm really pleased with, like, I know they're not perfect, but I think that for what, as you say, for someone who's a relative beginner still, it's that kind of just getting yourself used to using things as tools for improving your fitness. They've been absolute. I think they're worth their weight in gold now, frankly. So yeah, no, I think that the finance element is, you can almost kind of make of it what you will. But I would certainly recommend, if you're only going to invest in one kind of aspect of it, it's definitely the person that you're going to work with rather than the kit.
I appreciate that. What I would say as well, going back to the point of investing into it, I think a lot of people will also get disheartened if they are investing their time in, or their money, sorry, in spending in a gym, going there a few times a week and not getting anything out of it. They are far more likely to be like, well, this isn't working, what's the point? And then they become disillusioned with the whole idea of fitness in general, because no one's been there to help them. And then that's not really any fault of their own. If you go into a gym, they should really be trying to help you anyway. But that's not always the case. And sometimes you have to look for yourself. And as you say, investing in a person may well yield much better results than investing in just an establishment.
Yeah, no, I think that's quite I suppose it's different for everybody. I just think it's something that you can really, that you can kind of delve into the details of it, but also with the person you choose, in your kind of gut after quite a short period of time, that, for instance, when I was getting started, wasn't I? I saw some good results for a bit, and then I kind of plateaued off, and I think I probably did get a little bit disheartened. But I spoke to you, and you, rather than, as you say, with a gym membership, you kind of get disheartened and there's no way out of it, and you don't really understand what to do next. But I spoke to you. We made a couple of changes in terms of the diet. You actually told me to eat more things, which was always nice, and I started to see more results. I think that the nutrition side of things is an absolute revelation to me, that there's actually a minimum amount that you should eat to lose weight, rather than just kind of generally the less is better. It's really interesting.
Yeah, another preconception is that less is better. If you keep cutting back on what you're eating, you'll lose more weight. But that's also, again, to use an expression we've used now a couple of times, is a double-edged sword. If you're constantly cutting the amount you're eating, your body's just gonna pretty much just say no, that's enough.
Yeah.
and it's gonna stop losing weight. You'll get metabolic damage. There's all sorts of things that can happen. So not restricting yourself too much, if you can find your maintenance in the amount of calories that you should be consuming just to maintain your weight, and cut it back 10-15%, then you're going to see much better results than if you're halving the amount of calories that you're eating. But that's another topic for another time. What I've also got down here is extra travel time. Depending on where your gym is, where your local gym is, spending that time traveling and then being in the gym and doing your workout and then coming home again. For people that say they don't have time to exercise, they are then adding more time on to do exercise when they could be doing it at home.
Yeah, I feel like it's not actually something I'd ever really thought about. Because you kind of spend an hour doing exercise, or you can spend an hour driving to the gym and back. Yeah, no, that is strange, because I think now that there's almost to an extent that rather than doing an hour, or rather driving to the gym, so say it's like, for where I am, I'm in a relatively rural place. The nearest gym is probably a 20-25 minute drive away, and then a 5-minute walk from where you'd have to park up. Yeah, you're almost doubling the amount of time spent to do the same amount of workout, when to start with that would have been a bit of a kind of off-putting thing in general. But actually now I almost think that it's something that you think, well, hang on, in that case you could do twice as much workout. It's that mindset shift again. But it's no, that's not something I'd ever really considered.
We've also got a busy gym can be a frustrating gym. So
right.
think about it like this: if you're at home Imagine yourself at home, and then you're living with someone else, and they've got your resistance bands, and you're sitting there like, okay, can't do my workout now. If
Yeah.
you're in the gym and you've got a set amount of set equipment that you want to use, or set routine that you're fond of, and other people are using it because there's 20, 30, 40 people in there, not only is it going to extend the time that you're there for, it's just, personally, it puts me off. I mean, if I when I do go to the gym, I mean, I'm not currently a member of a gym at the moment, but in the past, if I go to a gym, I make sure to go to at a time that's antisocial. If anything, I want to go at a time that there is going to be the least amount of people there, and thankfully, in the line of work that I'm doing now, that's easier for me. In that, being self-employed, I can manage my time in terms of when and where I do things. But for someone who's working 9 to 5, their options are limited. So, and with a lot of people doing that, then the peak times are going to be when they're going to the gym, and for me, that just puts me off.
Yeah, again, I think that is something that, as someone who has never set foot in a proper gym, it's not something I've ever thought about, but actually that is, yeah. Especially because if you've got someone setting you a pretty specific set of exercises to kind of achieve for that day, it can also, I suppose it can also throw your rest times and everything like that off, because you can't just move to the next kind of station. You've got to wait for the next person before you. Yeah,
Exactly,
that's
and
certainly.
1-to-1 with a personal trainer, I don't think would be as bad, because they should be able to think on their feet. They should be able to accommodate and do something else potentially that works. For an online trainer,
Yep.
that becomes more difficult unless they're with you live. It becomes
Yeah.
frustrating. I'm not saying that an online trainer can't accommodate for that. They can give you backup exercises, for example, but it just becomes slightly more convoluted than it needs to be. The last one I have here is the feeling of being watched. And I know this is something that I think a lot of people struggle with, whether they call it that or whether they call it intimidation or whatever it may be. But the idea that you're doing exercise and people are watching you and judging you.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because that's the sort of thing that I don't honestly think that I would never have never have a problem with. I'm utterly shameless when it comes to that sort of thing.
That's good.
Um, if I'm doing something and someone wants to laugh at me, they can feel free. But yeah, I think as well from a personal point of view that as long as someone actually does, if they see that you're doing something and they think that you're doing it wrong or something like, if they come over and mention it to you, then I suppose it's okay. But yeah, I can absolutely see why there are a lot of people that would be really put off by the idea of, well, it's kind of the stereotypical like thing you get on a comedy show, isn't it? That someone goes into the gym, they pick up the kind of the 2 kilo dumbbell and start doing their exercise, and then you've got this 7.5 foot hulking behemoth that comes in behind and picks up the 200 kilo
Yeah.
dumbbell. Okay, that's yeah, I can see why that's probably not fun for
Yeah,
people.
and I can understand why people don't like that, especially if they're feeling self-conscious about their body or the amount of weight they're lifting or whatever it may be. But it's a tricky one, because people obviously say that don't worry about it, people aren't watching you, but in all honesty, they probably are. I'm not going to sugarcoat
Yeah.
it. I know that I've seen people walk into the gym looking like Billy Big and and they're doing stupid things, and they're the kind of people you
Yeah.
can't approach to correct them, because they're acting tough in front of their mates or whatever it may be, and they're just not worth
Yeah.
your time, really. The likelihood is that someone somewhere is probably watching you, possibly judging you, but you've got to just ignore it. If it does bother you, you can find exercise elsewhere. A gym is a nice tool to have, but it's not necessary, especially for beginner or intermediate level. Yeah, if you think that a gym is helpful to you, then that's just one of the things that you might have to deal with. But again, it might be
Yeah.
something that you just have to adjust in terms of the times that you go, so that there's potentially less people there to watch you.
Absolutely. Something that's just popped into my mind off the basis of this, bearing in mind I'm someone who has always said, oh, I would never, ever, I never feel the need to use the gym. I've already said in the long term, I might consider it. Are there any gyms that kind of do anything reasonable in terms of pay as you go, for want of a better phrase? So rather than having to commit to a proper full-on subscription, kind of almost like a just turn up once a week or just to try out the equipment, are there any places that really can help you with that sort of
I'll
thing?
be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure. believe, don't quote me on this because it's been a long time. I don't know how many the gyms there are in the country. I know that previously when I lived in Colchester, and there is now the gym, and I think they had a pay-as-you-go sort of system, but I'm not 100% sure. I think it might have been a standard price, now that I think about it. But I'm sure there might be some gyms that offer that sort of thing. There are some gyms that want to know how many times you're likely to go per week, and then they'll adjust the price accordingly. I'm not too sure on that. My knowledge of different gym models is a little lacking, I guess.
I suppose the question that follows on from that is that if there is there actually any benefit from a gym once a week with the different equipment, or a gym even possibly even less regularly, that when you can get hold of being in a gym, maybe something like a weekly setup, would that actually be of benefit, or actually are you better off just concentrating on what you'd be doing for the rest of the week anyway and not really bothering?
I think it could potentially be of benefit. I think what I would always suggest is sticking to a consistent program for anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks at least, in order to have a proper progression model. As you know, the name of the game is progressive overload, and to ensure that you're constantly improving, to force your body to adapt. If you're going to a gym and then doing something at home and then changing all the exercises you're doing, I think it's quite difficult to then keep track of your progression. That being said, if you, for example, are staying in a hotel and you've got a gym there and you want to be doing something a bit different, then give it a go. I mean, there are some things that you might want to do just to test yourself. You might want to go there and see, actually, I've been training for this amount of time. Let's see how much I can actually lift, because I can't necessarily do that at home.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. No, that's definitely, no, it's certainly something that when I'm allowed to travel again with work, I'll certainly be giving it a go.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I sort of brought up that scenario, because I know that's something that potentially you might be doing. So yeah, that's definitely something that we could factor in, which we can talk about as and when it crops up.
Sometime in 2025 at this rate.
Yeah, that could be the case. Fingers crossed for a vaccine sooner rather than later.
Yes, absolutely.
Other than that, were there any other pros and cons that you could think of that I didn't?
No, I think you covered you covered pretty much everything I had for pros and cons, and then you added quite a lot more than what I had. I'm disappointed by my lack of pros and cons. Actually, you far exceeded.
I mean, considering the fact that you haven't stepped into a gym, as you said. Yeah, I think it was not necessary that you had to think of too many, but I'm glad we were able to sort of go through that, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily know what the best thing for them is. So going through that, hopefully it's helped a few people make their mind up in terms of what they should be investing in, whether it's gyms, people, or somewhere in between.
Yeah. No, I think it certainly helped me in terms of I've always been against gyms in my mind mentally, but actually, yeah, I think they're not quite as evil as maybe I'd first thought. But so give it some time, and perhaps you'll see me in a gym one day.
Maybe I look forward to your first gym selfie.
Oh, brilliant!
Right, well, I think we've come to the end now.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much for coming on. I think it's been just as entertaining as Adam.
Am I going to win an award for it? That's the question.
Well, you have to talk to him. Maybe he can give you one of his awards.
Oh, excellent. Oh, I like the idea.
Lovely.
Of that.
So, again, thank you everyone for listening. I know this is a little bit sooner than I previously mentioned. I previously said it was probably going to be a monthly thing, but after a week, I started getting a bit antsy, to be honest. So I wanted to get it done a bit sooner and bring you something there a bit different. So from me, from Rob, I just want to say thank you again. And yeah, if you got any final thoughts, Rob?
No, thank you very much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Okay, well, in that case, take care, guys, and we'll speak to you soon.